You know, when we look at classical temples today, we usually just see these beautiful romantic ruins. But to the ancient Greeks and Romans, these structures were absolute marvels of cutting-edge engineering and flawless mathematical precision. Today, we're going to completely deconstruct the visual language of the ancient world. Let's dive into this explainer and figure out exactly how classical temple design works. We're going to transform what looks like a giant mountain of marble into a highly organized, brilliant kit of parts.
Picture this for a second. You are standing on an empty, dusty plot of land in ancient Greece or Rome. You've just been tasked with building a house for the gods. So, how do you actually pull off building an ancient architectural masterpiece? Well, you definitely don't just start stacking stones at random. You need a system. We are going to take a bottom-up construction journey today, building a temple right before your eyes, moving step by step, from the dirt beneath our feet all the way up to the sky.
Here is the architectural blueprint for our explainer. We'll start by laying the foundation, then raising the columns, crowning the temple, stepping into the inner sanctum, and wrapping up with grand layouts and types.
Step 1. Laying the foundation. Because before you can even think about reaching for the heavens, you need a monumental base that can actually carry an unimaginable weight of solid stone.
See, ancient builders didn't just pour concrete like we do today. They used this brilliant tiered system. Deep underground, you have the stereobate. That's the raw, unseen foundation level doing all the heavy lifting. Rising out of the dirt on top of that is the cupidoma, which is basically 3 monumental steps that elevate the temple up above the mortal realm. And finally, we reach the stylobate. This is the absolute crucial top step. It's actually often slightly curved to help rainwater drain off, and it serves as the ultimate VIP platform where our mighty columns are going to stand.
Moving on to step 2, raising the columns. We've got a rock-solid stylobate beneath us, so now we need to build up. We need to support a tremendously heavy roof, but we want to keep the space open and airy, not totally boxed in by thick, solid walls.
To reach those towering heights, ancient builders faced a massive logistical nightmare. Now, some columns actually were monolithic, meaning they were carved from one single giant piece of stone. But instead of monoliths, they often used modular building blocks called drums. Think of these as individual, precision-carved circular pieces of stone stacked directly on top of one another. By using drums, architects could assemble impossibly tall columns without having to drag a single 1,000-ton piece of marble across miles of rugged terrain. It's pretty genius.
Once those drums were all stacked up, the column needed a little refining. Enter the flute. Flutes are those elegant, curved vertical channels carved directly into the outside of the column. And this right here perfectly illustrates where engineering meets art. Fluting isn't just there to look pretty, it adds this really striking vertical rhythm. The channels catch that harsh Mediterranean sun and create deep shadows that aggressively draw your eye upward, making the whole column look way taller and more imposing than it actually is.
Speaking of tricking the human eye, ancient architects were basically masters of psychology and optics. Get a load of this. If you build a massive column perfectly straight up and down, our brains actually perceive it as looking slightly concaved or pinched in the middle. To fix this, builders purposefully carved a subtle swelling into the base and center of the column, which is called entasis. From a distance, this optical illusion totally tricks your eye into seeing a perfectly straight line. Plus, it gives the stone a bulging sense of tension, almost like a flexing muscle, bearing the weight of the roof above.
So reaching the very top of our column, we hit the capital. The capital is the load-bearing crown that joins the vertical shaft to the flat slab, known as the abacus, sitting just above it. Its main job? Dealing with all that crushing horizontal weight coming from above and funneling it down into the slender vertical column. But this is also where architects love to show off their distinct style. A capital could be anything from the simple, clean, austere curves of the Doric order all the way to a highly decorative Corinthian capital, bursting with flashy, stylized acanthus leaves meant to look like lush natural growth.
Step 3. Crowning the temple. Our columns are officially up. Now we just have to guide our eyes upward and cap off the whole open space with a massive horizontal superstructure.
Resting directly on top of our newly raised columns is the entablature. It's basically a massive 3-layer cake of stone. Sitting right there on the capitals is the architrave. That's the lowest, heavy, load-bearing beam. Right above it is the frieze, a wide central band that acts as the main canvas for all the temple's artwork. And capping it all off is the cornice, a decorative projecting ledge right at the top. But the cornice isn't just for show. It actually acts as an overhang to push rainwater far away from the building, protecting the stone underneath.
Let's zoom in on that middle layer for a second, the frieze. In Doric temples, the frieze has this incredible alternating visual rhythm, bouncing back and forth between triglyphs and metopopes. Triglyphs are these structural-looking blocks with strong vertical grooves, and sandwiched right between them are the metopopes, square, flat spaces. Ancient builders absolutely loved filling these metopopes with vivid, action-packed relief sculptures. So as you walk along the side of the temple, you get this brilliant beat: structured lines, then a storytelling sculpture, structured lines, then a sculpture.
Now look above the entablature at the short ends of the temple. See how the roof slopes up to form a grand triangular cap? That is the pediment. And trust me, this was not just dead architectural space. Because it sat so high above the entrance, literally gazing out over the entire city, the pediment was prime real estate. They packed it with the most magnificent, larger-than-life sculptures in the round. We're talking epic mythological battles or the birth of the gods. It functioned as a towering billboard for whichever deity the temple belonged to.
Of course, at the end of the day, a roof still has to handle bad weather. Along the roofline, they installed the sima. This was basically a heavy-duty stone gutter designed to collect massive downpours, often shooting the water out through these highly decorative spouts carved to look like roaring lion heads. And just to ensure the silhouette of the roof looked totally magnificent against the open sky, they added the akaterion. These were stunning statues made of clay or bronze, often shaped like palm leaves or the winged victory goddess Nike, placed right at the peak and the lower corners of the roof.
Step 4. The inner sanctum. We've built the outside, so let's mentally step out of the bright Mediterranean sun, walk past those massive perimeter columns, and actually go inside the building.
The spatial journey through the core of the temple is incredibly intentional. First up, you enter the pronaos, which is this welcoming little front porch area right before the main doors. Step through those doors, and boom, you are in the cella. This is the heart of the temple. It's a massive, usually windowless room, completely dominated by a towering, awe-inspiring cult statue of the god. In some temples, the space goes even deeper into the adyton, a super-restricted, highly sacred zone at the very back meant only for high priests. Finally, totally walled off at the back of the building is the opistodomos. This was a small, highly secure room that essentially acted as the city's main treasury vault.
And finally, step 5, grand layouts and types. I want you to zoom way out now. Let's take a bird's eye view, looking down at how this completed kit of architectural parts can be arranged to create entirely different scales of monuments.
What's truly wild is how the ancients strictly categorized their designs using math. They classified temples simply by counting the number of columns right on the front facade. Got 4 columns? That's a tetrastyle, usually just a modest shrine. Jump up to a hexastyle with 6 columns, and you get beautifully proportioned buildings like the Maison Carrée in Nîmes. Step it up to an octastyle with 8 columns, and you're looking at massive structures like the Temple of Bacchus in Bolbec. And if you want the absolute peak of monumental scale, you build a decastyle with 10 front columns, like the awe-inspiring Temple of Apollo at Miletus.
Now, we can also categorize these buildings by how the columns wrap around the outside perimeter. A pro-style temple keeps things simple, columns only at the front entrance. Amphi-pro style adds some symmetry by putting matching columns on both the front and the back. But when you want true grandeur, you build a periparidal temple, which features a continuous, unbroken row of columns enclosing all 4 sides of the building. And if you literally have the wealth of an empire at your disposal, you go dipteral. That is a breathtaking, massive, double row of columns surrounding the entire temple, creating this dense forest of stone like we see in the ultimate masterpieces of antiquity, such as the Parthenon.
All right, we have built our temple from the dirt all the way to the sky, and we've seen that the architecture of the gods really isn't magic. It is a perfectly logical, modular kit of parts stacked together with total mathematical precision. But this leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to end on. If it's literally just a system of blocks, steps, and clever optical illusions, why do these specific designs still define our modern idea of monumental power today? Think about it, from our government buildings to banks to museums, we still use this exact same ancient language to project authority and permanence. It turns out, when you figure out how to build something perfectly, the world never stops copying you. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep looking up.